So what if I told you that that aging isn't actually just about the passing of time? Like, what if aging is literally just the aggressive pursuit of comfort?
Right, which is just such a crazy way to think about it.
It really is. I
Yeah.
mean, think about it. We spend like a ridiculous amount of time and money trying to make our lives completely frictionless.
Oh, absolutely.
We've got perfectly climate-controlled houses, heated car seats, mattresses that somehow dynamically adjust to our body temperature while we sleep. We're essentially just wrapping ourselves up in this giant, cozy layer of biological bubble wrap.
Yeah, we've basically sanded down every single sharp edge of the natural environment.
Exactly. And, well, welcome to the deep dive, because today we are taking you right out of your comfort zone.
Way out of it.
Yeah. Today's source material is this really fascinating presentation from human biologist Gary Brecka, and it's all about the science of cold water exposure.
Which is everywhere right now.
It's literally everywhere. And our mission today is to sort of cut through that intimidating, sometimes really intense social media hype surrounding ice baths.
Right, because it can be a lot.
It can be way too much. So we want to distill the raw science into a practical, completely free habit that you can start, tomorrow morning in your own bathroom, just to boost your mood, burn some fat, and repair your body.
And honestly, the biological mechanisms we're going to look at today are just elegant. I mean, they are ancient systems.
Yeah.
And once you truly understand how they operate inside of you, the cold becomes, well, it becomes a lot less terrifying. It becomes more like this incredibly precise tool.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with that really provocative claim from Brecka, that aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. Just, I don't know, it flips everything we think we know right on its head.
It's the ultimate paradox of modern living, really. Because we seek out that comfort to preserve ourselves, to avoid pain.
Right.
But biologically speaking, that exact lack of environmental friction is likely the very thing accelerating our physical decline. Without environmental stressors, your body's natural defense systems basically just go to sleep.
Which brings us to the underlying biological concept here, right? Hormesis.
Yes, hormesis.
Basically, hormesis means exposing your body to short, controlled bursts of stress. And that triggers a physiological response that ultimately makes you stronger.
Yeah, it's all about finding that sweet spot of stress. I mean, if you subject your body to way too much stress, you just break the system entirely.
Yeah.
But if you have too little stress, the system just atrophies from disuse. So just the right dose of a specific acute stressor forces the body to adapt. It fortifies its defenses.
It's like the literal biological embodiment of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly that. And how this hormetic stress applies to cold water is just wild, especially when you think about our muscles.
Oh, this part blew my mind. Because the source breaks down the human body into 3 distinct types of muscle.
Right.
You've got cardiac muscle, which is obviously just your heart. You've got skeletal muscle, which is the stuff we see in the mirror, like your biceps, your quads.
The muscles you can actively flex.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have smooth muscle.
Which is really the unsung hero here. Smooth muscle is the tissue that literally lines your entire circulatory system. It lines your arteries.
Right, and it actually moves.
Yeah, it's capable of dilating, meaning opening up to let more blood flow, and contracting, so squeezing tightly shut to restrict that flow.
So this was a massive light bulb moment for me when I was looking through the source. Because if we want our skeletal muscle to grow, we all know we have to go to the gym, lift heavy things, and create micro tears in the tissue.
Right, you have to damage it a little bit so it repairs back stronger.
Exactly, and we just accept that discomfort as completely normal. But we totally forget that our vascular system, the literal plumbing that keeps us alive, is also made of muscle. So it needs a workout too, right?
What's fascinating here is how the cold provides exactly that workout.
Really? Just from getting cold?
Yeah. When you expose your skin to a sudden dramatic drop in temperature, your body triggers what is called a vasospasm.
Vasospasm.
Right. The smooth muscle lining your arteries violently contracts. It just spasms down.
Wow.
Imagine your arteries doing a heavy deadlift. They're being forced to work, to clamp down as rapidly and forcefully as possible.
But the more often you force them to do this workout by, intentionally exposing yourself to the cold, the stronger and more efficient they get.
Exactly. And Brecka's research notes that this is exactly why people who regularly take cold showers adapt to cold weather outside so much faster.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, their vascular plumbing is just incredibly well-trained at regulating internal temperature. You're actively keeping the smooth muscle of your arteries toned and responsive.
That's amazing.
Think about the implications for your overall cardiovascular health. When your internal plumbing can react to stress with that kind of elasticity rather than just becoming stiff and brittle over time, it's huge for longevity.
Okay, but when your arteries violently squeeze shut like that, I mean, that blood has to go somewhere immediately, right?
Yeah.
Or the whole system just fails.
It absolutely does. And this is where the survival mechanics of the body really take over. That vasospasm aggressively clamps the blood out of your extremities, so your fingers, your toes, your arms, and legs. The body is essentially performing this rapid internal triage.
It's like pulling up the drawbridge to protect the castle.
Precisely. It decides that keeping your fingers warm is a luxury it can no longer afford.
Sorry, fingers.
Exactly. It takes all of that warm, highly oxygenated blood and just forces it directly into your core, specifically to your vital organs, so your liver, lungs, pancreas, and kidneys.
Just a massive concentrated delivery of life support.
Yes. And it doesn't just stop at the organs either. A huge push of that oxygenated blood goes straight up the neck and right into the brain.
And the source mentions a comparison here that honestly stopped me in my tracks.
The sleep comparison.
Yeah. It says this rush from the cold is a rare secondary oxygen transfer to the brain, and it's comparable only to what happens during deep delta wave sleep.
Right, which is just incredible because delta wave sleep is the absolute deepest, most restorative phase of our sleep cycle.
That's when the magic happens.
Exactly. It's the period when the brain is actively clearing out metabolic waste, repairing itself, consolidating memories.
And you can get that while you're awake.
Yeah, to be able to mimic the brain oxygenation levels of that incredibly deep restorative state while you are standing there fully awake and conscious in a shower is an astonishing biological hack. You're basically bathing your waking brain in the recovery mechanisms of deep sleep.
Wait, I have to push back on this survival mechanism aspect for just a second.
Sure.
If my body is doing this violent triage, pulling blood from my limbs and flooding my brain to keep me conscious, does my body literally think I am dying when I step into a cold shower on a random Tuesday?
Yes. In a biological sense, it absolutely does.
You kidding?
No, I mean, the body's physiological response mechanisms are millions of years old. They haven't downloaded an update to recognize modern indoor plumbing.
That's a good point.
When you are suddenly engulfed in freezing water, your nervous system has no idea that you are in a safe, tiled bathroom. And it certainly doesn't know that the cold is only going to last for 3 minutes.
Right, it thinks I just fell through the ice on a frozen tundra while, I don't know, hunting for a mammoth or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It assumes you're in a completely lethal environment. So it initiates extreme, life-saving protective measures instantly.
Wow.
It hoards the blood, floods the vital organs to keep the engine running, and hyperoxygenates the brain. It does all this so you have the absolute maximum cognitive clarity to figure a way out of the danger before you freeze to death.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Because once that blood is moving at that velocity, it isn't just carrying oxygen.
No, not at all.
It's delivering this staggering chemical payload. Like starting with the psychological impact, we're talking about a massive flood of endorphins and dopamine, right?
The psychological shift is almost instantaneous, but what truly sets this apart from other things that trigger dopamine, like, say, eating a donut or scrolling through social media, is the duration of the effect.
Right, because the research specifically points out that this dopamine elevation lasts for several hours.
Yes, hours.
It's a sustained, natural high. The source practically dares you to try and be in a bad mood after getting out of a cold shower. It says it's biochemically almost impossible.
Because your brain is actively rewarding you for surviving what it perceived as a lethal threat.
The biological celebration of survival, I love that.
Yeah, but the chemical cascade goes much, much deeper than just neurotransmitters making you feel good. If you get the water cold enough, your liver responds to that severe thermal stress by releasing something called cold shock proteins.
Okay, cold shock proteins. That sounds like something straight out of a Marvel movie.
It really does.
What exactly are they doing once they hit the bloodstream? This source talks about them scouring the blood of free radical oxidation, but can you break down what that actually means for our cells?
Yeah, absolutely. So to understand the power of cold shock proteins, you kind of have to understand the threat of free radicals.
Okay.
Free radicals are essentially unstable rogue molecules in your body. They're missing an electron, which makes them highly reactive.
And they're looking for one.
Right. Imagine them just violently bouncing around, tearing at your healthy cells, trying to steal an electron so they can stabilize themselves.
Yikes.
The cellular damage, which is known as oxidative stress, is a primary driver of aging, inflammation, and disease.
So they're basically microscopic vandals destroying the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And these cold shock proteins act as, what, a biological cleanup crew.
More like specialized security forces. They sweep through the bloodstream, intercepting and neutralizing these rogue molecules before they can actually damage healthy tissue.
Oh, wow. So they stop it before it happens.
Exactly. They mitigate the oxidative stress. And on top of that protective role, they also actively initiate repair. The source highlights that cold shock proteins significantly increase the rate of protein synthesis in the body.
Which is the foundational process for muscle repair and recovery, right?
Yes, exactly.
Which leads to a really crucial point from the material regarding workout recovery. Because, I mean, initiating protein synthesis is great, but my understanding is that if I jump into a cold plunge, fasted, meaning I haven't eaten breakfast, I am essentially telling my body to start a massive construction project, but I haven't given the workers any lumber.
Right.
Am I actually doing more harm than good to my muscles in that state?
That is a brilliant way to frame it, and it's a very real concern. The cold exposure flips the switch for muscle repair. It initiates the synthesis.
But the raw materials aren't there.
Exactly. You still have to provide the materials. Brecka talks extensively about the absolute necessity of having full-spectrum amino acids to preserve lean muscle in this state.
And not just any protein, right? Because the source points out a major flaw with standard protein shakes. It mentions that some typical whey proteins can be, like, terribly inefficient, sometimes as little as 20% absorbable by the body.
The science here is heavily focused on bioavailability, especially when you're fasting. If you do your cold plunge and then plan to work out while fasted, your body is primed to repair muscle, but it lacks the fuel. Now, if you eat a heavy protein meal to get that fuel, well, you break your fast.
And you lose all the metabolic benefits of the fasting state.
Exactly, which is why the source mentions a specific type of powder they take every morning that is 99% absorbable and only has, like, 2 calories.
Right. And we obviously aren't here to push specific products or anything, but the underlying mechanism is what's really important to understand.
Absolutely.
By taking a highly absorbable, near zero calorie, full spectrum amino acid, you are giving the body the exact, basically pre-digested building blocks it needs to execute that cold initiated muscle repair. And you're doing it entirely without breaking the fast.
It is biohacking at its absolute core. You're perfectly aligning the physical stress of the cold with the exact nutritional timing your body requires to recover.
Okay, so the cold is demanding a massive amount of internal energy to fuel these vascular workouts, to pump the blood to the core, and to initiate this protein synthesis.
Right.
But to do all that without literally freezing to death, the body has to find a massive fuel source fast. Which brings us to the physics of fat loss. And honestly, this completely changed how I look at stubborn body fat.
Oh, it's fascinating. It all comes down to the fundamental difference between how water and air interact with the human body.
Okay.
The source states a vital underlying metric here. Water is 29 times more thermogenic than air.
Meaning, water pulls heat away from your body 29 times faster.
Exactly.
The analogy used in the source makes this so terrifyingly clear. It talks about capsized boats.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you are sitting in 72-degree air, which is basically just a pleasant room temperature, you are perfectly comfortable. You could sit in 72-degree air literally forever.
Yeah, you'd be fine.
But if you fall into 72-degree water and just stay there, you can actually die of hypothermia.
Because that 72-degree water is relentlessly and aggressively stripping the heat out of your body at an incredibly rapid rate.
Wow.
Your body simply cannot naturally generate heat fast enough to keep up with the thermal drain of the water.
Wait, so this brings up the definition of a calorie from the source, which kind of blew my mind. We always think of calories as just, I don't know, numbers on a nutrition label, or something we arbitrarily burn on a treadmill.
Right, a unit of food.
Yeah. But the source defines a calorie purely by physics.
Yes, a calorie is quite literally a measure of heat.
Just heat.
Just heat. By definition, a single calorie is the amount of energy required to raise 1 cubic centimeter of water by 1 degree Celsius.
So if a calorie is just a unit of heat, and this cold water is draining my heat 29 times faster than air, am I literally radiating calories into the water just by sitting there trying to stay warm?
That is the exact physics of what is happening. Heat leaving the body literally means calories leaving the body.
That is insane.
And to keep you from freezing, your body activates a very specific specialized tissue called brown fat.
Brown fat, our internal thermostat. But how is that different from the fat I'm actively trying to lose on a diet?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains why cold water immersion is unparalleled for fat loss. We all have normal white fat.
Right.
White fat is essentially just dormant energy storage. It just sits there on your waistline or your hips doing very little.
Very stubbornly.
Very stubbornly. But brown fat is highly metabolically active. It is packed with mitochondria, which are the energy powerhouses of your cells.
So it's essentially a furnace waiting to be turned on.
Precisely. When your body senses this dramatic 29x thermal drain from the freezing water, it turns on the brown fat thermostat.
Okay.
And to generate the massive amount of heat needed to save your life, the brown fat starts actively burning through your visceral fat.
Visceral fat.
Yeah, that stubborn, dangerous white fat that wraps around your organs. It literally uses the bad fat as fuel for the furnace to keep you alive.
That is unbelievable. So, okay, what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Right, how do we use this?
It's exactly. We've talked about vasospasms, deep sleep brain oxygenation, hours-long dopamine highs, cold shock proteins scouring free radicals, and firing up the brown fat furnace to literally melt away visceral fat.
It's a lot of biology.
It is. And I'm sure you are listening to this thinking, okay, I'm completely sold on the biology, but how do I actually do this without having a heart attack from the shock? Let's get into the absolute practicality of the protocol.
The most important practical takeaway from the research is entirely counterintuitive. Colder is not better, especially for beginners.
Right, because you see these videos of people breaking the ice on frozen lakes, and you think that's what you have to do.
Exactly, and you don't. If you happen to have access to a dedicated cold plunge tub, the ideal temperature to start is actually between 48 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
So not freezing.
Not freezing at all. You do not need to be breaking through a thick layer of ice like a polar bear to get these biological benefits.
Because, like we said, 50 degrees is still stripping heat 29 times faster than 50-degree air.
Exactly. It is more than enough severe thermal stress to trigger the vasospasm, release the cold shock proteins, and activate the brown fat furnace.
Right.
Going colder when you are unadapted just unnecessarily increases the risk of shock without actually increasing the biological reward.
And the duration is very manageable, too. The material recommends a minimum of 3 minutes and an absolute maximum of 6 minutes.
Yeah, you don't need to sit there for half an hour trying to prove how tough you are.
Right. But this raises an important question, though, which is when you should be doing this routine.
The timing of the cold exposure is incredibly crucial to how your body responds.
Yes, the source addresses this directly. Based on recent research, you should absolutely be doing your cold exposure before you exercise, not after.
Which goes completely against that old school locker room mentality, right? Like jumping in an ice bath after a heavy lifting session to reduce soreness.
Everybody did that.
I know. But the current science indicates that if you plunge after hypertrophy training, so after lifting weights, you actually blunt the acute inflammatory response that your body desperately needs to signal muscle growth.
Wow. So you essentially freeze the very inflammation that tells the muscle it needs to rebuild.
Exactly. You're stopping the adaptation you just worked so hard for.
But by doing it before your workout, you get the intense dopamine focus, you activate the brown fat, and you prime the vascular system, all without interfering with your workout gains.
It's the perfect pre-workout.
It really is. The source actually shares a very specific morning routine to model this. It's basically wake up, have some black coffee, do some breath work, hydrate, and then go right into the cold plunge for 3 to 6 minutes before ever hitting the gym.
Right.
But, I mean, what if you don't have a $1,000 cold plunge tub sitting in your garage?
The shower method is entirely sufficient to get these adaptations, and the protocol is brilliantly simple.
Exactly. When you step into your shower tomorrow morning, you don't start cold.
No, please don't.
You get in, use your warm water, lather up, wash your hair, and rinse completely off. Just have a totally normal, pleasant shower.
Right.
Then you step physically back out of the stream of the water, you reach over, and you turn the faucet to full cold as it will possibly go.
And you must wait. You let it run for 30 seconds to a minute so the residual warm water in the pipes actually clears out and it gets genuinely bitingly cold.
Yes. Wait for it to get real cold.
Yeah.
And here is the absolute most critical instruction for actually surviving this without a panic attack.
This is the game changer.
You take a deep breath in and you step back into the stream of cold water on the exhale.
Yeah.
Why is the exhale so important?
Stepping in on the exhale is vital because the natural human reflex when hitting freezing water is to gasp aggressively.
Right, that sharp intake of breath.
Exactly. If you step in while trying to inhale, you will immediately hyperventilate, and the autonomic panic response will completely take over your brain.
And you'll just jump right out.
Yep.
By forcing a slow, controlled exhale through pursed lips as the cold hits your skin, you are consciously overriding the nervous system's panic signal.
Oh, that's smart.
You are telling your brain, I am in control of this stress.
You just deal with it. You work to get that cold water all over your chest, down your back, over your head, and you start with just 30 seconds.
Just 30 seconds.
Yeah. And day by day, week by week, you work your way up to a minimum of 1 minute, eventually pushing for that 3-minute mark.
It's highly adaptable.
It really is. So just to briefly recap this incredible biological journey, by simply turning a handle in your shower tomorrow morning, you are forcefully exercising the smooth muscle of your arteries.
Getting that vascular workout.
Right. You are clamping your blood into your core and flooding your waking brain with the restorative oxygen levels of deep sleep. You are triggering a massive hours-long release of dopamine.
The best natural high. Exactly. You are commanding your liver to deploy cold shock proteins to neutralize cellular damage and rebuild your muscles. And you're turning on your brown fat thermostat to literally radiate stubborn calories away as heat.
It is an entire biochemical pharmacy.
It is. And it is all waiting for you, entirely for free, right there in your own bathroom. It just requires you to briefly abandon that aggressive pursuit of comfort we talked about at the beginning.
Just for 3 minutes.
Just 3 minutes. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. I'll leave you with this final thought from our resident expert.
So consider this. If our bodies possess incredibly powerful survival mechanisms, like the brown fat furnace and the miraculous healing properties of cold shock proteins, and these systems remain entirely dormant until they are unlocked by the sudden stress of extreme temperature shifts, well, what other biological superpowers are currently sleeping inside of you, simply because your modern, perfectly climate-controlled environment never asks you to use them?